now we've got the Future Generation segment, and I'd like to invite Caroline Gurney, who's the CEO of Future Gen, does an exceptional job. I will walk off that way and she'll walk up this way and take you through the next part of the presentation. So thank you very much, Caroline.
So you're actually going to see Jeff again in about 3/4 of an hour because we're going to do a panel with the Australian Financial Review. I'm going to change it up a bit and sit here. But I'd really like to welcome on stage as well Lex from Youth Off the Streets and Jun Bei from Tribeca, and Martyn McCathie, who's just coming up, who is basically on the investment committee for FGX and FGG. So now Jeff has gone out of the room, I'm going to talk about him. So basically, we haven't been on tour, we haven't spoken about Future Generation for a number of years really to an audience. So it's exciting, really exciting to be in front of you all. So Jeff, in 2012, he went to London and he read an article in the Financial Times, and it basically talked about a group of fund managers that had come together to work for free to make a social impact. And so he sort of mulled over this article and thought, actually, we all do a little bit for charity. We all do a little bit, but do we do enough? And how can I utilize my investment skill, my networks, our shareholders to actually make more of a difference? So how do I leverage the financial markets? What do I do? So he came back and he spoke to a number of other fund managers. So you had Gabriel from Sandon, you had David Paradise from Paradise, and a number of others. And so Future Generation Australia was born. And that was about investing in Australian equities. So he brought the fund managers together. He also got a number of the providers to actually help underwrite all the costs. And then he went out to shareholders and said, we all want to make an impact. How can we do that? And so what they came up with is that you would invest in this company and you would get no performance fees, no management fees. All the fund managers would work for free, but we would give 1% of the total to make a social impact, to give that to charities. And it was really successful. It kind of resonated with the fact that I can put my money in, I get a dividend, and I can look after myself, with that, but also I'm going to be giving that little bit to charity. And so I think from him and from me, without a doubt, and I have been CEO for 6 months, it's about getting everybody to have a little bit of Future Generation in their portfolio. So we give back. Then 2 years later, he wanted to do the same again with global equities. So Future Generation Global was born. And when I think about sort of the global side, I think, we had to bring in a different range of managers working for free, no performance fees, no management fees, and we give that 1% as well. But we took charities that were very, very different. So for example, for Future Generation Australia, it was youth at risk. And the fact that Lex is here today, is testament in terms of what she's going to talk about, in terms of the impact that you've all made as shareholders to her not-for-profit. And then with Future Generation Global, it was about youth mental health. And that's something I think during COVID, we've all seen, we've all experienced in some way. So I'm really pleased that I can talk about those today. So we have a slide in some of the fund managers and the charities we support. So luckily for you, I'm not going to go through every single charity and let you know what they are. But I think the best thing really would be to ask Jun Bei to talk about, what does she do as a fund manager? You work pro bono, the money's in your main fund, it's important. I feel it's really important to you. And maybe if you can talk a little bit about your inspiration and what your outlook is as well.
Well, absolutely. So, look, my inspiration, first of all, I'm very honored to be here. Thank you so much for including me. And it's always a pleasure to be talking to everyone here. For me, it's an honor really to be able to manage money for future generations. And it's such an honor really to be part of the Future Generations family. Not normally when we're in the finance industry, exactly like what Caroline said, that we do a little bit of charity things here and there, but we never really follow through. And we never really follow up to see what happened and, all have a strategic vision of where we want to get to. We just feel like we want to do more. When the opportunity came up, I think we probably been managing Future Generations money for 7 years, since 2015, I just checked, and almost since the beginning. And that was just really eye-opening for us. Every day we get to do the things we're passionate about, which is investing in the share market, buy, sell shares. At the same time, we're doing something that goes towards all the social contribution. And also what's amazing is that, normally we don't hear about all these different sort of charity. We hear bits and pieces on TV advertising and things, and they tend to be the similar really large charities. What Future Generation does is bring this portfolio of charity and show us what they do. And it's just been incredible to, along this journey over the last many years, to get to learn those charity. In fact, I have become very close to some of the charities. Today we'll hear from Lex about her charity, and I've become very close with Ray's Foundation. Also another little one, they help high school kids finding mentors during a time when it's been very challenging. So it's just incredibly rewarding, and then by doing something that I love at the same time. So inspiration is fantastic.
Excellent. So tell us a little bit about your market outlook. I mean, obviously you've heard from WAM this morning, but in terms of your outlook, what is it? Because I think you have a slightly different perspective.
Oh, look, absolutely. Well, first of all, I think I'm speaking from an active investor. What does that mean? So my fund actually does long short, which means we can buy the companies, invest in companies we think share price will go up, and then we can short the companies so we think the share price will go down. So that give us a lot of incredible amount of opportunity in the current market where it's sort of gyrating. But ultimately to us, market is a lot of investors in the market is very short term, focusing on what's happening in the next month, next 3 months. Now, things does look a little bit tough in the next 3 months, as you probably heard from Jeff in previous sessions. Things will slow a little bit. But remember, we have gone through a tremendous amount of growth in the last couple of years because of stimulus. So yes, we will slow a little bit. There's a little bit of inflation. We do have to manage through that. But remember, a lot of inflation is to do with border closure. We don't have labor, couldn't move around. So a lot of that will come off. A lot of those things will slow to come down. And the share market has come off a little bit. A lot of those bad news has been priced in. So as an investor that focuses on long term, this is an amazing opportunity for us to buy the company that's been sold off. So our market outlook is actually reasonably positive. We think the Australian share market looks pretty good. We're not particularly expensive. We have a lot of commodity focused businesses. We have banks. All of these companies will pay a huge amount of dividends over the next 12 to 18 months. China is going to stimulate. So all of that means, Australian market looks pretty positive. Probably not going to give you the double-digit return that we've gotten used to see in the last few years. But still, regardless, it's positive. And the dividend yield, we're looking at the market, is about 5%. And that's not too bad, fully franked. So all of that together will support our economy. Our inflation is still not running away. So, I think the market still look pretty reasonable.
Excellent. So one of the things we ask all of our fund managers to do is to give 2 stock picks. For you, slightly different to the WAM ones. Yes, I think they are. So I'm just going to ask you to give your 2 stock picks, and why now, and for the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. So I must say, when you said 2, I was thinking, I got so many, because the market is volatile.
That's for next time.
That's next time. Market is volatile, and it presents opportunity in some of the highest quality companies. Remember, this is a market condition. Any share market, you always have to stick with quality companies that have proper earnings. So the number one is a very favorite name is CSL. This company has been the most successful, one of the most successful Australian story, listed in 1990 from a government institution, moving to probably the top 5 company in the ASX and a global company. Incredible success story, double-digit growth for decades with double-digit to come. So this company is a truly market leader. Now, what's been happening in the current environment is that or the investor become nervous about growth companies, tech companies in particular, because interest rates are going higher. And so when the investor tend to have tunnel vision, once you start investing in share market a little bit, we all have tunnel vision. When they think about tech company, they go, okay, that's expensive, sell that. What else is growing? So anything that's growing has been sold off. So that's including CSL. Clearly it's going quite well. So that's been sold off. For CSL, I think in January fell something like 20%, 20 to 25% in 1 month. And that is so unusual, just because investors sort of just so scared about something, and then all piled into, obviously, the likes of BHP. And that represents a lot of opportunity. We think this is a great buy. Regardless what's going to happen to the economic outlook, whether US is going to slow down or globally slow down, this company will grow double-digit for the next many years. And that's regardless of whether there's a recession, non-recession, very defensive. And the company is cheaper than how it's ever been. So, we think this is a fantastic company, and it's a great time to be buying now. And it's almost like a bottom drawer sort of company. So that's the first one.
Let's go for the second one before I ask you some questions on it.
Okay, let's go for the second one. So again, the second one, we tend to be a little bit contrarian. So we pick things that's sort of being sold off and nobody likes at this point. I'm going to pick a tech company, which you probably know which one, Xero. Again, it's a market leader. It's a leader in SME software, focused particularly in accounting software. However, it's recently branching out into some of the HR and other space. It's got a great platform. It's got decade-long execution, a sort of proven execution in dominating market share, in dislodging existing incumbents. It dominated market share in the New Zealand first, a little New Zealand company, and then it came to Australia and then replicated its business model, and then dominate the Australian market. And then it went to the UK a few years ago. Again, they replicated its business and dominated that market share. And now they're gradually moving inroad into the US as well. So to me, this is a business, again, it's a bottom drawer business. It's a business that in 5 years will be significantly larger than what it is today. People worry about, today's earnings is really expensive and all that. But this company not buying today's earnings, because they just showed you that they can replicate their business model in New Zealand, in Australia, in UK, and US. It could be global dominance. Remember when CSL was a tiny company? Remember when Cochlear was a tiny company? There was so much skepticism. Remember, how expensive people used to say those companies? It's the same thing. So this is another company. I think it's great to buy. Share price volatility, because people worry about the short term and it's expensive and all that. You know what? Share prices come off more than 50%. It is the time to be buying this.
So you actually spoke before about that. You've got lots and lots of stock picks that you would recommend. So are you moving your portfolio around a lot of the time? Especially with what's been happening in markets.
Look, what we do with our portfolio is that we become opportunistic. So simply because the market is actually quite volatile and there's not enough investors in the market to keep the price consistent. That's why you can see the big price drop, like CSL, top 5 company to drop 20% in a month. It's unheard of. So that presents really nice short-term opportunities. When it does that, we will jump in and buy these companies. And then when we make our return, we'll trim or we'll find other opportunities. And being the active investor, the long short, it allows us to do so because we never run out of money. So we can always find short opportunities to continue to buy those opportunities as they advance.
Excellent. So we can ask Jun Bei questions afterwards, but I just wouldn't mind going back to my sort of stock pick, which is obviously Future Generation Australia and Future Generation Global. And when you talk about diversification, I mean, that really rings true to me, because that's what we've actually tried to do with both of the companies. And Marty obviously is on the IC and is sort of responsible with, we have fantastic IC committee, which has got Zenith, Morningstar, well, the founder of Zenith, I should say, Morningstar, Jana, a number of fund managers as well. And they look at the composition of both of the portfolios. And I mean, Marty, it might be worth just saying a few words on how we balance all that together.
Yeah, no worries. And look, I think when you look at the FGX and FGG proposition, I think we described it earlier when we were talking about it. It's almost a win-win-win proposition. For the fund managers, they're able to give back to the community without us asking for a cash donation. It's not extra work for you. You're managing a portfolio already. You're just giving us your expertise and your time and capacity in your portfolio. For the charity partners that we have, it's an annuity and a consistent stream of income for them to be able to do the great work that we're doing. And I'm really excited to hear from Lex and the work that you guys are doing. But from a shareholder perspective, it's much more than that. What you're getting is you're getting access through a listed investment company structure, access to a diverse portfolio of investment managers and a portfolio of managers that have been handpicked by an experienced investment committee, as Caroline touched on. And what they're looking to do is blend complementary managers together. So we kind of categorize our managers into 3 key categories, being long equities, absolute bias managers, where Jun Bei would sit, and market neutral managers in the case of FGX. And what we're looking to do from a shareholder base is provide you with consistent performance and take away some of that volatility in the market. So it's a really exciting opportunity. Economically, from a shareholder perspective, if you wanted to replicate this portfolio yourself, you'd be paying a management fee largely in excess of 1%. You'd have a performance fee. You'd also have the additional costs involved around running a listed investment company, board fees, investment committee fees, and service provider fees. Everybody's working on a pro bono basis here. So for you're getting that access at no cost, and 1% is going to philanthropic organizations in lieu of an investment manager.
I think it's really important for us, nobody really wants to invest unless you get a return. I think that's incredibly important for everyone. So you get, maybe we could show sort of the dividends for you. So what Marty talked about is basically we have 2 companies that are actually, they have growing sort of dividends. So that's really important. That's the feedback that we've got from a number of shareholders. So it's basically, say for example, Future Generation Global, it went up by 200% last year, and it's gone to twice yearly to 6 cents per share. And we have a fantastic profits reserve, which Jesse Hamilton, the CFO, has been working on. And we have 8.1 years coverage. So you actually make sure that you get that long-term, understanding that's going to be there for the long term. And then with also Future Generation Australia, we've got basically a profits reserve there of 4.8 years, and also the dividends are going up. That's 6 cents. So for me, the fact that we've got a dividend yield and the growing dividends makes a huge difference. But what is really important also is that sort of social impact and the business of social impact. I think it really is a business. And the fact that we can actually give a number of not-for-profits money over the long term, so they can actually plan, so they can actually do what they're really good at, I think is really what our mission is as well. So I'm delighted that we've got Lex here. Your not-for-profit Youth on the Streets has been around for a number of years. It helps so many young people. And I think for me, you've always been very much the fabric of what we actually do, especially in New South Wales. So I'd really like to ask you, what is your inspiration? What gets you up, to go in? Because it's a really tough area, youth homelessness.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. Thank you for having me here. I've not been to something like this before. This is all very new to me. So
it's quite daunting.
It's not so much daunting. It's just it's struggling to keep up with some of the terminology. So I'll try and be mindful of that when I'm talking about, I guess, youth homelessness terminology as well. So what gets me up in the morning? Look, I never knew what I wanted to do when I was at school. I wasn't concerned about that. I just didn't have an idea of what I wanted. And I started year 11, I became unwell, I had to leave, and I went back and decided I wanted to finish my HSC because I'd started it. And I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I ended up doing different jobs in Sydney. I worked at Randwick Racetrack as a strapper. I worked as a car detailer in a smash repairs. I was a courier. And then I finally went to university. I thought, I want to go to university and then see what it is I want to do with my life. And I did a social science degree with a double major in criminology and psychology. And it was while I was there that we got to the psychometric testing component of the psychology part of it, and I thought I need to go through a practical example of doing that testing. So I applied for a job that had that as a component and did the testing, which was very arduous, and then got a call back, and I thought I need to look at what this job is. And it ended up, it was working with young people in custody at Yasma in Sydney, a girls' jail. And I thought, oh, I don't know how I'm going to go with this, like young teenage criminals, like is this what I want? But I went there, I stayed for 10 years, I loved absolutely every moment of it. My frustration was that we were not able to reach the young people early enough before they ended up in custody, and we just seemed to be preparing a lot of young people for an adult jail, which seemed to be, it didn't satisfy me. So I looked at the not-for-profit space, and I worked in a few different organisations and came to Youth Off the Streets 10 years ago. So I guess the thing that gets me out of bed is that we have a huge homelessness issue in this country. We're very good at working out what happens overseas, but we're not very good at looking at our own backyard. And, you know, tonight just in New South Wales, there's 10,000 young people who are homeless. When Father Riley started Youth Off the Streets in 1991, there were 10,000 young people homeless in Australia. So we're not solving the issue. It's actually, you know, becoming an increasing concern. So for me, I feel that I had opportunity when I was growing up. I didn't experience, you know, a lot of hardships that our young people do. I had a good home life. And I think that it's a right that young people should be able to be given opportunity to be able to make their own decisions and not have circumstances forced on them at a young age and then not be able to ever recover from that. You know, we're talking about the cost of living and interest rates going up and how incredibly hard it is to get into the property market. It's like, well, you need to also consider there's a big chunk of young people in this country that that's never going to be an issue, like having a property and even having job security is going to be problematic as well. I know we're very excited that we got down to 3.9, I think it is, % unemployment, and that seemed to be a big issue for the election. It was more about a percentage rather than the people impacted, and so I just think that getting me out of bed is that we've got a big problem we haven't solved. So
what do you do? What do you do on a day-to-day basis? I mean, for me, I look through COVID. I mean, I see my daughter, you know, she's had friends staying on her floor, you know, and I think that whole couch surfing piece whereby, you know, a lot of students, you know, the hope in a way for our future, a lot of students at university, you know, they used to stay on each other's floors when they didn't have anywhere to go and they could balance it, but they don't actually have those relationships now because of COVID. So from my point of view, just with that, you know, the hope in a way, you know, they're at huge risk of being homeless as well now.
Well, that's the thing. There's an added layer, I guess, with COVID. We had young people that we normally wouldn't have contact us, and they called to say, look, I lost my job, I can't pay my rent, I'm not sure if you're a service that can help me because I've never been in this situation before, but what do I do? So that was very early on at the beginning of the pandemic. And there's still a problem for the thing that I don't understand is that nobody can fill positions. Everyone's got vacancies in their employment. We've got 22 vacancies in our organisation at the moment, and we're really struggling to fill them. I don't know where everyone is because there's also a lot of people that can't get work. So that's a problem, you know, moving forward for us. But yeah, there's more young people that need support now. And they're not young people that have just been disadvantaged from very early childhood. They're young people that are becoming disadvantaged now because of the pandemic and because of the cost of living. And that means that we're an organisation that we get 50% government funding, so 50% of our income we rely on future generations, corporate partners, grants, individual giving, and that's really unstable as well, particularly when you have a pandemic and people give to a charity. When you're looking at reassessing where you're giving money, one of the first things you're probably going to look at is, well, can I afford to do that? So that was a big impact for us as well. So there's more of a need in this space, and there's less, I guess, money around to support that need.
And what have you been doing with the Future Generation money?
Well, we've been primarily using it in our Aboriginal services part of the business, and we've been since 2016 when we first started receiving support. We've been providing cultural camps for young people, getting them connected to community, providing intensive case management support for them, helping them with housing, mental health, those types of things. And more recently, last year, it was when the pandemic hit Dubbo area. There was a lot of, there was an outbreak there, and we were sort of stuck in isolation going, we must be able to provide some support to this regional community. So I spoke to some of my staff who actually were born in that area, and we contacted the Health Minister and the Secretary of Health and Police Commissioner, and we were able to take, we have a semi-trailer that opens up. It's like a big transformer, and it's a mobile classroom essentially. And that went out to Wilcannia and was used for 3 months by New South Wales Police as their command hub, because there's not a lot of infrastructure out there. And we sent our cultural team across to Dubbo, and they provided support to around 3,500 young people and families in that area, because everything shut down. Like, people were taking the stay at home seriously, but there was still a need to support people in that area that were not getting access to the support that they needed. So there was food support and help with vaccinations and mental health support, and also to the broader areas around Wellington and Wilcannia and the other communities. So that was more because we had to adjust. I guess the thing with when COVID hit, the good news for us was that one of the first organisations that contacted us was FGX and said, look, we understand that you're probably going to have to modify what you're doing, what you're delivering at the moment because of the isolation restrictions. You know, let us know what it is, how you need to adjust, and we're happy to continue supporting you. So that was a relief for us at that point, because it was very much an unknown of how we would be impacted. I think it was, I was listening to something early on with COVID, and they were talking about how they expect, because of what happened with Qantas, and, you know, so many people lost their jobs basically overnight, and they were saying if charities think that they're going to be immune to that, they've got rocks in their heads. So for us, it was just a matter of staying afloat to get us to this point, and hopefully to work out how we can keep moving with COVID and beyond.
So Future Generation across both companies has given 52.9 million since inception, and we're on track this year to probably around 13 million between the two companies to give to all these sort of amazing not-for-profits. With Future Generation Global, we've actually changed. We've just done an expressions of interest, and we're actually moving towards the prevention in the mental health field, so that we can actually help, you know, young people before they need intervention or treatment. And that's something our social impact manager is working really hard on. We had 175 applications, so we're working through those at the moment, because we all believe, you know, that young people are great. They have a fantastic future, and if we can put support there to help them, we can try and ensure that. But one thing I wanted to ask you, Lex, and if there are any questions, if you put your hand up, we'll come to those in a minute. But like, everywhere closed during COVID, but you couldn't. So how did you manage that?
Well, yeah, that was the interesting thing, wasn't it? It's like, you know, isolation, stay at home, don't go anywhere. And we work with homeless young people who don't have a home. So, yeah, that was difficult. Our refuges, they operate 24/7. So our concern, I guess, was if we had an outbreak, how do we manage that? And also, how do you keep young people that you've just started to provide support to in a refuge and say, you can't leave, you must stay here? that was initially a little bit tricky, but as young people started to see people dying around the world, they became the enforcers of the rules in the houses, which was good. Our schools, we have 6 independent schools. They went to remote learning, and that was also an area we're not quite sure how that was going to work, because we work with disadvantaged or disengaged young people from education in the first place. They're disengaged from mainstream, which is why they're with our independent schools, so they need more support. But they kept working online, and actually when we came out of the pandemic, the lockdown, they were keen to actually get out of home and get back into the classroom. So that was a relief as well. But it has been tricky. With our bigger events we were not able to run. We still had to work out how we could provide that individualised intensive support to young people without it being face-to-face. So there was a lot of Zooms, a lot of phone calls, and a lot of adjustments. And at the same time, you know, you're dealing with the concerns that staff have as well when you're saying you've got to go to work, you've got to go to the refuge. And it's like, but, you know, what about COVID and what about isolation? So that was a tricky area to navigate as well.
We're really passionate about what we do, so if you have any questions, all of us can talk about it afterwards. But please come back, grab a lunchbox, come back in and listen to Jeff and Phil King from Regal, and as well as Jun Bei as well. And thank you very much.